This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Today I want to talk about the anatomy of a 20-inch Kentucky Crossroads quilt block. Sometimes when I get ready to do a project, I just wish someone would just tell me how to do it. Don't tell me to read about it, just tell me how to do it. And that's what I'm going to do today with this great block. It is so nice and it's lovely and it is fun to put together. And 20 inches makes a really nice block. This is the first one I did, and it actually just became a little piece that I could set on a table during the holidays. So here we go with the anatomy of the block. If you look in the center, there's a 9 patch, which is 9 squares that are put together. We're only going to use 2 colors on this quilt. That made it fun too. And then there are what I call bar sections, and they have 3 pieces of fabric, and there's 4 of those going around all 4 directions. And then you have corner points, which should be the green is the same. Those are small triangles. They're no problem to put on. And then we have 4 what I call setting triangles. And those are ones you want to be careful with because they're going to have some bias along one of the edges. Then you have a 9 1/4 inch square. These are going to be your large triangles. You're going to cut one from background material, and then you're going to cut it twice diagonally. And this is the one you want to be real careful with. These are the bars for your strips. They're 2 1/2 inches by 6 1/8 inch strips. You're going to cut 8 of your main color and 4 of the background color, which is going to be the centers of those 3 strips. And finally, you need the crossroads points at the end of the 3 strips. This is a 4 7/8 inch square. You're going to need 2 of those out of the main print, and then cut 1 diagonal line from corner to corner on both of those sheets, and those will make the points that go at the ends of your roads. And then for the outside edge of the block, which is actually part of the block, there are 2 more pieces. 2 1/2 by 16 1/2 inch strip of your background. There are cut 4 of those, 1 for each side. Then the other thing would be for the corners, you're going to have a 2 1/2 inch square, and I've seen it where you use a different fabric for that and not the background, but you can see in this one I did use that and it worked out really well. So you have a lot of choices when you're making this little quilt. Okay, I want to look at the construction for the 9 patch. And you can see I've done 2 of the rows already, and they're coming together really good at the points. This material was very light. The back is like a batik, and so when I got 1 row put together, I ironed the seams one way. When I got the next row ready, I ironed it the other way, and when I put them together, they locked, so I was able to sew those. And so if you look at it with the last one that I have, if you look at the back, the seams are going towards the right, my right hand, but the seams on this one are going towards the left. And when you take and look really close in between, you can see there's that one and there's that one, and they lock together, and that's really nice if your fabric's not real heavy. And then you just start over at the end with a good knot, good thread, sharp needle, and make small stitches. The smaller your stitches when you're doing a quilt with hand stitching, the better you're going to like it. And then always turn it over and check to make sure that you're picking up enough material. And you're just going to sew straight across there all the way to the end, and then back stitch to hold that in place a couple of times. And you'll be real pleased with how that looks when you open it up. Now I did open up the seam that went between the rows. I tried ironing them to one side and it was too bulky, so I ironed that flat. All right, now if you look at the 3 bars and you say, well, that's really easy to sew together, and it is. You just lay the light and the dark together and you pin it in place and then start. There's no dot to dot sewing on this, so you would just start right at the end and sew all the way across and then go back a couple of times, back stitch, and it's ready to be ironed, pressed really. And I did do that, and I'm not sure how I liked it, but you know, I just looked at the way it wanted to lay and did it. But now when you get ready to put the other one on there, and one of the things, the longer the strip is, the more important this is to take, and if this one we went that direction, then put your other one on and send it back the other direction. It helps keep things from getting kind of wonky when you're sewing. And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to start at this end and make little stitches all the way down to the end. And then you'll have this really neat 3-piece block like this one. And there I've pressed it and it's ready to go. So I'm just going to set it back down on the plan. When you get to the side triangles, the ones that I told you to be very careful with because they have some bias, you'll have some bias edges. And once you sew that on, you want to make sure that when you press, you're really gentle with that and you're not ironing it as you're going. And then I want to share with you how you're going to sew your pieces together, because you're really going to have them laid out like I've got them laid out. And you're going to take and you're going to do the first row across. It's going to be a triangle, the bars, and a triangle. Then come back and add your little triangle to the end. All right, then come down and sew your second row that's got your 9 patch, your bars together, and your triangles. Now, I went ahead and did those 3, sewed those to the first piece, and then came back and added my end points. You just see which way you like to do that. And then you go down and you do the last one. But the difference is usually you're used to going straight across on something that's sitting horizontal. And in this case, it's not like that. And so you would get those together and just be careful with your pressing. And then I had 2 little tips that I wanted to share with you about needles and thread. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the thread, when you're getting ready to sew, sometimes you can't get that needle to go through, the thread to go through the needle. And be sure that you're using the end that came off the spool first, because that's the way the grain of the threads run. And the other one that's neat to me was when I learned that a needle, if you're having trouble threading your needle, can't quite grab it, just simply turn the needle to the other side and try threading that, because they're made to accept the thread through one side more than the other. And so finding out that one block worked so well, that same year that I did that one, I made another one, but this time I made 9 blocks and I put them together, and it made a 56 by 56 lap quilt. And you can see I used a holiday material in there again, and had a lot of places that I could do some top stitching. And one of the pieces I had so much fun with was the 16-inch pieces that are on the very edge. And here on the internet I found what looked like ribbon, and it was really fun to sew, and it could be done by hand or done on the machine. Here was my sample to mark it off, and it was really nice because it was 16 inches. But instead of, and that would have been easy to deal with, but sometimes when I've got lengths, instead of doing that, I just work with centimeters. They're so much easier to count off. And so I went down and I marked every 8 centimeters down to the end, which is about 2 inches across. Then I went and I found a container that would jump from one to the other. It was so nice. And I made that So I had a trail to follow. Now, when I did it on the machine, I used one of the templates to go from place to place. But if you were hand sewing it, you'd have those lines drawn and go there. But you just start at the very beginning and go over the first hump and then add in your ribbon piece, and then go over the next hump and add it in. And you go all the way down to the end, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to work your way back the other way. And it really goes pretty fast, and it sure is pretty on the edge of this quilt. And like always, I say, look at the back of your quilt and see how it's going to look, because it can be just as an important a part almost as the beginning of it. And don't forget to add your label somewhere showing that you did it and when you did it. One of the most attractive quilts that I saw using this pattern, they had used batiks for that main color. And each block was one type of batik and then went into the next block for another color. And that's very effective. I just happened to have this bright material and was going to use it. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe.